Okay, hi, I'm Ben Mitchell with Boss Design, and I look after our acoustic meeting pod department and have done for a number of years now, and want to talk to you today a little bit about our range of pods that we are launching and supporting in the US. Okay, so products-wise, we are going to focus in on our Scene range of collaborative meeting spaces and individual focused workspaces, and also on TP4, which is our range of individual focus work stroke telephone booth product. So to give you an overview of what that means, what that looks like, our offering, we've got a wide range of products available, and within the Scene collection there are 6 different models, 6 different sizes, but each of those can be customized in terms of fabrics, finishes to suit the environment in which it's specified for. So the Scene collection really supports some focused work in for the smaller range pods, but also goes on to support larger collaborative spaces and co-working. So everything from an individual one-person pod all the way up to probably a 10-person meeting space and everything in between. But that will of course depend on how you want the settings to work internally, whether you want that to be a formal table setup, formal meeting solution, or lots of options of how that can be furnished internally as a collaborative space. So with Scene pods, just to talk a little bit about those in detail, typically they would have a glass front, a glass rear, so roughly about half the pod would be glass, allowing the natural light to flow through and people feel connected to the workspace in the surrounding area. And the internal panels inside the Scene pods would be fabric standard. There are many options and lots of ways in which you can customize the interior of the pods using the standard price list options. So lots of sort of manufactured customization options in there. So it's whilst it's a standard range of products, it's quite easy to work with a designer to customize it and make it look different than products that a customer elsewhere might have had. So they can feel like the product is personalized just by working through all the options that we've got. So I guess the most obvious one will be to look at different fabrics inside the pod. Yeah, we have a number of ranges who we work with. So for instance, Chimera, Quadrat are 2 really popular choices that I know are available in the US as well. And they have a very wide range of colours, of textures, of patterns, and they are reliable suppliers to us as well and have been for many years. There are limitations, so the weight of the fabric tends to need to be below 450 grams a metre to enable that to wrap successfully around the acoustic panels and the profiles. Other than that, the only thing to consider is the width of fabric, but most fabrics will sit in a fabric band anyway, so there's no confusion there. The acoustic panels themselves, behind the fabric, is what it does, it absorbs or reduces the reverberation. So the sound waves as we're talking and conversing inside one of the acoustic meeting pods will bounce around off hard surfaces, but when you've got a good healthy mixture of reflective surfaces and of absorption in there, then you'll get a comfortable environment internally in which to talk. So behind the fabric panels we have acoustic foam, and that will help to reduce the amount of reverberation, and we'll always help and guide you through that process, but typically 50% reflective surface, 50% absorption in there gives a really comfortable space to talk and to listen to. In terms of actual dealing with some hard facts, we're very proud of the engineering and the acoustic benefit that our pod provides. So the Scene pod has been tested and gives a result of up to 37 decibels sound reduction. So what does that mean? That means that to a client we can demonstrate that what goes on inside the pod can't necessarily be heard clearly or be deciphered on the outside of the pod. And the sound tests are done in such a way that it's done on an assembled product. It just doesn't talk about one material, or it just doesn't tell you that the glass gives you this benefit or the panel gives you this benefit. It talks about an assembled product, and that's really important, because you can have the most expensive double glazed panel in the world, but if the system isn't engineered very well, the sound seeps out through all the gaps. So at a distance of 2 meters away from the pod, the sound measurements are taken from a sound source inside the pod. So if we looked at something like a typical workspace, which would have at least 40 decibels background noise, it used to be much higher when clients had printers and equipment in there. So giving you 40 decibels background noise outside the pod, 37 decibel sound reduction. That gives us the privacy factor of over 75, which enables us to confidently say that a client can achieve speech privacy. And our approach is not to make a soundproof pod. That's quite an important thing to consider here. Our approach is to add a level of sound reduction at a price which fits the client's budget, which enables them to achieve privacy in their meeting spaces. So with the Scene pods, there is a ventilation unit that comes alongside it as an option, and that will circulate air from the surrounding office space into the pod to ensure a supply of fresh air is constant, and that will take air from the surrounding office space and maintain that circulation of air to make sure that the people inside the space are comfortable and the temperature's maintained at a comfortable level to work into. Options, so many options to look through in the price list, whether that be functionality or whether that be in terms of finish and how that can tie into the project scheme which you're working on with the designer or the client. So airflow would be an option that we'd always recommend for a client to take to make sure that's a comfortable working atmosphere. One of the main options considered is the fabrics, the finishes, the colours. So for instance, all the panels inside one pod could be of a uniform colour and finish, or you could have specify each one as a different colour and a different finish. So dependent on what you want the space to look and feel like, again, it's a great option to be able to do that. And within the pod itself, the structure can be customised in terms of the colour of the framework as well. So we can achieve almost any RAL colour finish on the frame. So you could go for something quite dark and quite moody, like an anthracite or a black frame to really set the space off differently. Or you could equally lift it and give it a lighter, airy feel by using a lighter, a white or a light grey. In terms of functionality, you can specify a writable glass panel, so that would replace one of the acoustic panels internally, and that means that there's a full height whiteboard that can be written on with a dry marker pen. And with it being a glass panel, it performs well in the long run as well, so you can be sure that after how many sketches and wipes off, that will perform really well in the long run. External is really important to clients because they want a product which will sit really comfortably as part of the scheme. So again, you've got fabric colours, frame colours which can be specified to cover the exterior of the pod, but we've also got a range of cladding options as well. In the main, they would be timber, so whether it be a nice warm oak timber veneer with a fluted detail. There's many options in there to make the pod sit really comfortably as part of the scheme, or to tie it in with other materials and other finishes which the designer is looking to use on the scheme. We want everybody, colleagues and clients alike, to be confident that we've built up a broad base of experience and that we know how to deliver projects successfully globally, which is ultimately what we're about. So the team here based in the UK, from here, we've delivered a number of key international projects, which I'll just talk briefly about. So the first I would mention is some of the work we've been doing in Asia with Hayworth and with BMW. And a really good demonstration of our flexibility and us listening to clients and clients' demands and responding to what they're asking us. We re-engineered 2 of our products to match their brief, and to date we've supplied almost 120 different units, different pods to China and South Korea, and that business is continuing for us. It is worth mentioning that that's been delivered on time, in full, with no errors, no quality callbacks, no damages. So, you know, a real success all round for us, which is continuing. So that's a really important one to highlight. It tells us all about the flexibility, the flexible approach of Boss, and it tells us about our experience of manufacturing and supporting clients on their schemes globally. That was really a number of things, really, in terms of customising the frame finish, in terms of changing panel sizes, table heights, door positions, and actually building, supplying self-supporting floors for the pods as well. So it started off looking at 2 of our products from our catalogue and ended up being quite customised in terms of the way we make the panels as well for them over there. So quite a few items and areas of the product were customised on there for that particular client. So great, yeah, a great project to be mindful of. And also, I would say another really exciting project, and you'll be able to see some of the photos of these, is for a client in New Zealand. You know, from the UK, I think Auckland is about as far as you can possibly go in either direction. So yeah, there's logistical challenges of its own. But over 2 phases with this client, we delivered over 60 pods for them. And they were aspect pods or scene pods, and there were also individual worker pods in there as well from our cube collection. Again, it's worth being mindful of how we customised and responded to the client's brief in terms of panel constructions, in terms of colours and finishes, and the photographs that you'll see of this project will, I'm sure, be a great resource and a great inspiration to go and talk to designers and to encourage them that actually, you know, with these options that we've got, we can do something really exciting, we can do something really different and achieve something better. So yeah, one which is it's a project which is, or a client which is really close to my heart. Really, we engaged with Cummins in the US for quite a long time, and their engineers and their decision makers really put a lot of faith in us as we walked with them on a journey and changed and re-engineered a lot of the the features of the pod. To suit their requirements. For instance, they had a pod which they wanted it to be taller, so they love our standard product, but they wanted an 8-foot tall pod. So yeah, that's fine, okay, we can do that, we can make it 8 foot or 240 millimeters, yeah, that's fine. So we went on a journey with Cummins, and we customised 2 or 3 of our pod models from the Scene range, and to great success again. So we delivered over, I think it's around 40 different pods to Cummins in the US so far. So with the information that I get and who I see out in the market, certainly for collaborative and meeting spaces, we would come up against Orange Box, or we would see their product specified quite widely. They have quite a bit of traction in the market, and the products tend to be quite well known. So Boss's approach really is, it's a very holistic approach in that, you know, we've talked a little bit before about fabrics and finishes, which is all really important, but we genuinely do understand clients' workplace needs and position ourselves as responsive to that. So whether it be just the pod itself, or whether it be the whole setting from an individual work setup with a desk and an ergonomic chair, or whether it might be all the way through to the collaborative settings that we offer. Okay, it's a really important one to cover this with UL. So the market generally demands that a product has UL certification. for sale in the US. So what does that mean for Scene Pods? It means that you all, as a business or a third-party testing company, need to look at our pod, scrutinise it, take it away, test it, and come back and say, yes, that meets the criteria, that meets the standards, but you need to do X, Y, and Z, and a few other things to make sure it's fully compliant. So at the moment, the Scene pod doesn't carry UL compliance and isn't UL tested. But we've had the prelim tests done, carried out, and we have a good idea of where we need to go and what needs to be done. However, the next phase of the work needs to be scheduled to be carried out with UL, which will involve actually physically testing the product. So as of today, as of this moment, the product can't be sold as a UL listed or rated product. Yeah, the new normality, which is ever-changing on a daily basis. What can we talk about? We can talk about maybe different settings within the spaces and talk about proximity or social distancing, and we can talk about fabrics, finishes, and how we actually keep the spaces clean and safe for individuals to use and to feel confident using. There's still a clear requirement for privacy within the workspace, and clients are telling us that, and clients are coming to us and still have a requirement for this type of product. But what they're asking us for at the moment is a little bit more advice on how does that work and how can they work safely within the spaces. So as we all may know, hard flat surfaces are easy to clean and easy to disinfect, and that's something which needs to be considered by the end user and their cleaning regime. So for instance, with glass panels, with writable panels, they're all smooth, hard, flat surfaces which can easily be cleaned on a regular basis and disinfected as well, which is really important. Other finishes that you would find on the interior of a pod would generally be aluminium for the framing components. And again, aluminium is a hard, flat surface, so it can be easily cleaned and disinfected. Fabrics for acoustic or fabric panels, it's widely understood that fabric isn't really a major carrier or supporter of the virus, but therefore it does need to be cleaned and disinfected. So we can support that with the manufacturer's guidelines, the manufacturers of the fabrics and the upholstery that we're specifying or that might be already there in the building itself. Also to consider, I mentioned before, is about space and the way the space is utilised in a pod. So what might have been previously a 3 metre by 3 metre space, and it might have supported a 4/5 person meeting space. But now with distancing guidelines, we know that that many people can't safely occupy a space for a longer period of time. So a number of options available to us because it's a flexible product. We know that the pods can be moved, they can be relocated, and we know that the interior space within the pod can be changed and reconfigured really easily. So with like a 4-person meeting space, for instance, looking at some of the drawings you might see now, you would see that a 2-person working space can be easily achieved in there with a 1 metre plus or maybe even a 2 metre distancing inside. So there's some thoughts into how do we use the existing spaces we've got and how do we specify maybe larger spaces now that can be changed into larger meeting spaces again as time evolves and as we learn to live with COVID in the workplace. Yeah, I mean, going back in Boss history, I mean, telephone boxes have got a really, a place in history in the British culture, really from the red telephone boxes that we used to see on the streets of London, are long gone. But nevertheless, there's a requirement in the workplace, and has been now for a number of years, for a small footprint of space where an individual can go in there. And what started off just to maybe take a call or make a call away from the workstation and their colleagues so that they weren't constantly disrupting the colleagues who were sat at the desk working or might be on the telephone themselves. So it was as much of a move away, so as we're not distracting the others in the workplace, to go into an isolated area with some sound reduction so that phone calls, etc., can be made. And this is really an advent of the open plan office and an evolution from there. What we have seen in the past few years is these types of spaces actually are getting used more and more. They're used by choice, and people want to spend maybe 30 minutes, an hour or slightly longer in these spaces. And it might not be just a phone call, it might be multiple calls, it might be video conferencing, or it might be just for a prolonged period of individual focused work. So with TP4, how is it different, or how does it fit in, or why would you want to talk to a client about it over another product, which is a great question. And again, lots of the benefits we talked about, we looked at with the Scene Pods in terms of customization, the way you can change the outer, not just the outer finishes, but the outer textures as well. You can add some real timbers on there, which really brings a degree of warmth and comfort to the workspace, and ties in beautifully with some of the other timbers that can be used as well. So a good degree of customization on the colours and textures, but also on the interior panels as well. Quite often 2 acoustic panels and a glass panel at the rear, glass door, pivoting door at the front. Normally the TP4 pod will come equipped with a work shelf in there, so it will support either a smaller tablet, or it might just be a little old school with a notebook and a pen, or it could be the Focus model, which actually includes 4 just over an 11-inch or a 280mm work shelf, and so it's easy to carry a laptop in there. And again, I talked a bit before about prolonged periods of individual focused working. So TP4, there's lots and lots of options if you look at the 4 main models within the TP4, and you can mix and match those, but for ease we settled on 4 individual models: the Focus, the Classic, the Light and the Black model. So it's easy for a client to pick out one set of features rather than to give them a long list of options. We can give them 4 pre-configured models to choose from. So with the Focus and the Classic and the Black, you'll notice that in addition to the work shelf in there, they've got a power unit underneath, so you can plug a charger in there, and then there's twin USB charge as well for whether it be the mobile devices or tablets in there too. And looking up into the ceiling tile in the small individual telephone pods, you've got the options in there for a nicely refined LED light system, and for comfort again we've got concealed airflow in there. So the ceiling tile inside the TP4 has an open weave fabric finish, allowing it to provide a level of acoustic absorption in there. It also encapsulates the nicely detailed LED downlight and the concealed airflow in there as well. So it's providing a comfortable atmosphere with a continuous airflow through there to be working inside. Something else to think of with TP4 as well, it comes complete with its own plinth as well, a levelling plinth, so it caters nicely for buildings with uneven floors. So the plinth is actually placed down first, levelled, and then the pod is built from that. So that's included in the models. Yes, we have a number of clients who want to talk to us about filtering, who feel the need to add in additional levels of filters already in place in the open plan office, but to add those to pods as well. So there will be an option to add in a HEPA filter for the TP4 and for the Scene pods where those clients require that. Okay, so it would be interesting to mention like the popularity of this kind of product, the TP4 product. If we took a walk through a typical production schedule on a monthly basis, we would see that probably every other project at least either is for TP4 pods or includes TP4 pods. So we're confident that it's absolutely relevant and continues to be for our client base. So yeah, that covers the Scene and the TP4 products. Hopefully, all the options that you'll need to consider. My role really is supporting Rob and the team in the US. They're very capable and have a lot of knowledge of the product, but I'm also available here to support any inquiries, whether it be a larger project inquiry or whether it need something which is a little bit out of the ordinary and we need to think a bit outside the box and take a different approach. So my role within Boss is to really support every client and everybody who wants to talk about pods to their clients, so we'll do everything we can to help.